In 2008, the Denver Nuggets won 50 regular season games. Showstopper Carmelo Anthony was finding his rhythm at 23 years old. His co-star was a former MVP and an icon in the city of brotherly love, Allen Iverson. The pair were torching opposing defenders on a nightly basis, and what was their reward for such a dominant regular season? A first-round matchup against Kobe Bryant and the Los Angeles Lakers, the team that would go on to win the next 2 NBA championships. LA swept Denver with ease, which was no surprise since they were the best team in the Western Conference. And the Nuggets, who had the #1 offense in the league, were the 8th seed. A 50-win season barely secured them a playoff position. In 2008, every single postseason team in the Western Conference was a contender. And this isn't a one-off phenomenon, because it happened again 2 years later. The Wild West has always been a battleground, a land of cutthroats, where only the most savage and vicious make it out. And fast forwarding to 2025, this season has been no exception. By April 19th, the Western Conference seeding was set in stone. The gates to the playoffs had closed, and the team to represent the West in the NBA Finals would emerge from this final 8. At 8, the tough and rugged Memphis Grizzlies, led by internet sensation Ja Morant. At 7, none other than the benchmark of excellence, the Golden State Warriors. At 6, the heir apparent Anthony Edwards and his Minnesota Timberwolves. At 5, the recalibrated Los Angeles Clippers. At 4, the Denver Nuggets and their emperor, Nikola Jokic. At 3, 5 words, Luka, LeBron, Los Angeles Lakers. At 2, the fiery Houston Rockets. At 1, on top of the mountain sat the MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and his Oklahoma City Thunder. All 8 of these teams had a legitimate shot at rising above the rest. Let's start with the runner-ups. Minnesota encountered a makeshift Lakers roster in the first round. LA was driven by pure hype and the overwhelming star power of their tandem. LeBron James and Luka Doncic are enough to power any team towards contention. With a tactical savant and JJ Redick as their head coach, Los Angeles was ready to wreak havoc on whoever they faced. Unfortunately for them, they were dealt a most unfavorable hand. In a cruel irony, winning hurt the Lakers. Had they dropped a tiebreaker to the Nuggets or the Clippers, they'd be staring down one of those 2 older dwindling cores to begin the playoffs. Instead, they had to face that man, a villain set on eliminating every legend he'd grew up watching. He dealt with KD and the Joker, and now had his eyes set on the King. Despite respectable outings from Doncic and his 40-year-old counterpart, the Minnesota Timberwolves eliminated the Los Angeles Lakers in 5 games. But this series summary omits the crucial details. In Game 4, Minnesota won by the skin of their teeth. They needed all 16 of Anthony Edwards' crucial fourth quarter buckets, and all 43 of his total points. Without Edwards' heroic performance, this series would be tied at 2 apiece. Who's to say Los Angeles doesn't win the next 2 out of 3? Maybe if Austin Reeves had played a little better. Could LA have shifted the tides if one of their 15 supposed 3-and-D wings managed to contain an actual one in Jaden McDaniels? If Ant-Man failed to convert in the clutch shot after shot, are we looking at a classic Lakers playoff run? Minnesota survived everything the Lakers could throw at them. And what awaited these Wolves in the second round after slaying the King himself? Only the best shooter of all time, conveniently paired with one of the greatest playoff risers the game has ever seen. The Golden State Warriors swung for the fences at the trade deadline a couple months prior, acquiring disgruntled superstar Jimmy Butler from Pat Riley's cold, merciless hands. At 35, Butler isn't getting any younger, so he had to display his absolute best from the moment he stepped on the court. And he did just that. The Warriors went 23-8 following Butler's arrival and versed the Houston Rockets in the first round. Now Houston is a refined chaos. The youngsters in H-Town had stabilized their core after years of combustion. With such a talented roster featuring high-caliber weapons and extraterrestrial athletes, all they needed was leadership to guide these boys. They inserted veteran guard Fred VanVleet into the locker room and the starting lineup, and left the barking orders to no-nonsense coach Ime Udoka. Both teams were all too familiar with nail-biters, having played the second and third most clutch games this season, so it came as no surprise when the series went to 7. But all Golden State needed was a heroic performance from Buddy Hield in the series finale and an all-time disaster class from Rockets guard Jalen Green. This series was a case of grown men putting the kids to bed. But time is a circle, scars show growth, and progression is an inevitability. So in a few years, these kids in Houston will grow up, and when they do, they'll be a nightmare. And there's others who resonate with that sentiment. Ones who are forced to look on as spectators, fiending for the opportunity to rise and stake their claim in a volatile conference. But regardless, this was not a moment for the youngsters. This one was for the old dogs, who now had to overcome the Ant-Man's wrath, as he hoped to add another legend to his hit list. Edwards never got the chance to make Curry bend the knee, as the baby-faced assassin fell to a hamstring injury that ruled him out for the series, bringing Golden State's electrifying campaign to a quiet, unceremonious close. Minnesota advanced to the Western Conference Finals, which left one spot remaining. The Oklahoma City Thunder dispatched the Memphis Grizzlies with minimal hardship in the first round. Ja Morant's exit in Game 3 following a scary fall put the nail in the coffin. This paired the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets in a make-or-break MVP versus MVP conference semifinals. Denver went to war with the Clippers in the first round. Kawhi Leonard looked as though he'd uncovered the fountain of youth, moving with the explosiveness he once had in San Antonio. It was a 7-game showdown, which could be a sleeper for the most entertaining series in this postseason. Jokic's co-stars did just enough to move past Leonard's best efforts, who had to carry the dead weight that is playoff James Harden. But there's nothing flattering about a team that won the NBA championship just 2 seasons prior going down to the wire with the Clippers, a squad many expected to miss the playoffs. The Nuggets were one Aaron Gordon game winner away from defeat. And yeah, firing your head coach right before the postseason will do that to you. I mean, Big Fella was out there coaching these dudes himself. Teams like the Thunder have open pasture as far as the eye can see, while the Nuggets face a culling. Jokic has maintained his seating at the head of the table. Every year that passes only distances the living legend from further greatness. The Denver Nuggets have failed to maximize Jokic's prime. Paying almost $400 million for Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. is a surefire way to get yourself released as a GM. Denver's complacency and unwillingness to shake things up following their championship run has closed the window on this current roster. Except they almost beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. Denver went all 12 rounds in an electric main event versus OKC. The Nuggets pounced on Oklahoma City, capitalizing on Chet Holmgren's timidness to walk off Game 1. In Game 3, which was an overtime thriller, Denver's savior Aaron Gordon donned his mask and cape once again and saved the city. Denver was up 2-1 in the series, and the prospect of burying Oklahoma City was attainable in Game 4. The Thunder had their backs to the wall, and under severe pressure, they responded. Both teams split the next 2 games, which set up a Game 7 of monumental proportion. With the underdog New York Knicks toppling the Boston Celtics, the winner of this Game 7 would be the favorite to win the NBA championship. And by the end of the second quarter, that answer was all but written. The Thunder secured the final spot in a dominant outing. And then there were 2. Future legends were placed in each other's crosshairs. The path to the conference finals was arduous for both men, encountering threats which could have abruptly ended their season. But when the lights were on and it was time to dance, SGA stole the show. Oklahoma City vanquished Minnesota in 5 and will now be heading to the NBA Finals. They will face the Eastern Conference's champion, the Indiana Pacers, who've had their own miraculous sprint towards June. You have to admire what Indiana has accomplished. A 50-win 4th seed that's reached 2 consecutive conference finals, this time breaking through. Seeing their run, I can say with assurance that all 8 teams in the West could have replicated it. What if Denver had won Game 4? How would the Timberwolves fare against the Nuggets? We all saw how that went last season. What if the Lakers had beaten Minnesota? Luka Doncic sent OKC home in 2024. What if Steph Curry never got hurt? The Warriors' offense was a machine with him and Butler. The Western Conference playoffs were a bunch of prize fights. It was less about the structure of a roster and more about their stylistic clashes. The margin of talent was so thin from team to team. It really came down to who you faced and how you performed on a given night. If we shook the tree a little, who's to say the Thunder would be standing on the podium? But regardless, we'll never have the answer to that question. And history will remember the Thunder for their brilliance, just as it did with the Lakers. Thanks for watching.